Peace FM 104.3.
Please allow me to refer to the protocol already established and to thank everybody for being here, those who are physically here, those who are watching from elsewhere. We are very grateful for your attention. Today is September 7th, and we are exactly 3 months away from the 2020 presidential and parliamentary elections. This election will be historic in many ways. It will be the first time that such an election has been conducted in the midst of a global pandemic. It will be decided by the largest electorate in the nation's history. It will be the first in the Fourth Republic to be contested by a former president, and the first in which a major party's ticket will feature a woman. But the moment also brings with it another more important, more urgent historical milestone, and that should guide our priorities as a people and shape the focus of our government in the years to come. This will be the youngest electorate in the history of this nation. 7 out of every 10 people who registered to cast a ballot on December 7th were born about a decade before the Fourth Republic. Nearly half of them have only ever known Ghana as a multi-party democracy. Isn't that interesting? And so, in many ways, this election is about the future of the many millions who make up a rising generation with grand global aspirations for themselves, for their culture, and for their country. It is their ambitions, their energies, and their self-belief that will write the next chapters in Ghana's history. The future of this nation, its fortunes, and its very fate hinges on their ability to attain their fullest potential. The passion, positivity, and promise of the youth are the fuel for any serious agenda for the future of this country. It is for this reason that we must be invested in the success of the teeming youth of this country, while we must be absolutely relentless in our determination to create a social, economic, cultural, and political environment that allows them to prosper and live dignified lives in a nation they can be proud of. And in many respects, it is about jobs, sustainable jobs. We cannot guarantee them, the youth, equality of outcomes, but we should certainly guarantee them equality of opportunity. This is the commitment of the People's Manifesto. The reason why we were not swayed by the criticism that by going to the people, and the people, the list includes the chiefs, the artisans, students, farmers, traders, teachers, market women, professionals, and so on, and inviting them to be active participants in policies that will affect their own lives meant that the NDC lacked ideas. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, do allow me to state that any plan that excludes the agency of the recipient is at best an alienating effort. As a party that respects people regardless, our manifesto must perforce carry the voices and hopes of our people, who will eventually own the outcomes. The easiest process would have been to lock a few people in a room for a couple of weeks, backed by consultants who have no clues, who sometimes have no clue as to the concrete reality of the life of the people of our country, and then call the outcome a manifesto for Ghana. At the core of the concerns expressed was human development. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the economy is about human development, no more, no less. It is about building a strong, well-educated, healthy country that protects the vulnerable, creates and sustains spaces for the aspirations of everyone to develop to their full potential, and rightly so. For Ghana can only rise to the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century if we face it with a full complement of our ingenuity and talent. And we can only do it if we eliminate the barriers of gender, geography, poverty that excludes so many people from reaching their potential. This, my friends and countrymen, is the work of the next 4 years and a prerequisite for the future that lies beyond. We owe it to our youth, especially to their determination to succeed, their ambitions, unlimited energies, and intellectual prowess that one finds everywhere in our country, to help raise their levels of confidence to believe that they can overcome their general current cynicism and pervading frustration and become hopeful. And we know that the disappointments and disillusionment of the last few years means we must proffer concrete plans and not just promises. We will not offer our youth charity. We will collectively work towards making them truly independent. This explains everybody's involvement in crafting this manifesto, especially the voices of our youth. This is the commitment of the People's Manifesto to the youth of Ghana. The manifesto highlights. Please permit me to share the highlights of the wishes of the people, of our people, in these critical areas, beginning with education. The underlying principles reside in the conviction that every Ghanaian, regardless, deserves quality, relevant education with a thrust towards inclusive education, lifelong learning that admits varying skills and competencies. We don't all have to do the same thing. We have a plan for education. The next NDC government will commence the Next Generation Education Initiative. This is a program that will enable the Ghana Education Service to provide basic and senior high school students access to interactive remote learning. This investment, and actually we started that in our previous term with the iCampus Ghana and the iBox. This investment in the future will enhance the availability of digital learning resources for schools by integrating technology into the learning environment, ensuring universal internet access to these institutions, and providing students and teachers with devices. We intend to bring our education system into the 21st century. These tools and technologies will facilitate digital teaching and learning and keep teachers and students connected in and out of the classroom. Most importantly, it will improve the quality of education. It will encourage intellectual curiosity, and it will help us close the inequalities in our education system. We have every plan and desire to make the free SHS much better by ensuring that its numerous challenges are addressed and that higher operational and academic standards are introduced and sustained. To do this, We will abolish the double track system. And as His Excellency has already said, we will complete all abandoned structures for secondary and technical education. This includes the score of E-blocks abandoned by this government for no justifiable reason. These measures will allow us to cater for current and future students. And we plan to make the free SHS more inclusive by expanding it to cover students in private senior high schools, in underserved and deprived parts of our country. I had a singular privilege of leading one of Ghana's premier universities, and I have seen close up the challenges that tertiary students face, and of course those of their families and their friends too. And this informs our agenda for the nation's universities and their students. First, please let me reiterate that we are unequivocally and unashamedly opposed to the Public University Bill. It is a weak attempt to introduce political control over our universities and to erode academic freedom and institutional autonomy. We stand with the faculty and leadership of our public universities in opposing this grotesque overreach. We know how COVID-19 has impacted an already weak economy and personal finances, and we must not let this become another barrier to opportunity. That is why the next NDC administration will absorb 50% of fees for tertiary students for the 2020-2021 academic year as an incentive to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 on students and their families. As a long-term investment in financial access beyond the recovery, we intend to increase the student loan amounts to be commensurate with prevailing educational costs. We will restore the Student Loan Plus initiative that we created, which takes care of newly admitted students who are facing financial difficulty even in paying the admission fees. These loan repayments will only begin when beneficiaries gain employment after school. We also recognize that many inequities that virtual learning during this pandemic has laid bare. So we will provide free laptops to tertiary students to facilitate participation in online classes. We will also establish free Wi-Fi zones in all public and private tertiary institutions.
Peace FM.
His Excellency has already talked about the establishment of new universities. Our commitment to increasing access to education is at the heart of our free TVET policy. It is a plan to provide the free technical and vocational education at the secondary and tertiary levels. We will complement this with a program for the establishment of an ultra-modern and fit-for-purpose technical institutes in the regions that do not have any. And to maximize early career opportunities, we will also implement a national apprenticeship program and a national internship program. We shall address head-on the problem of examination malpractices and restore the credibility and sanctity of examinations conducted by WAEC. Quality education also depends on having good teachers, well-trained teachers, and having enough of them So we will abolish the mandatory national service and teacher licensure examination for graduate teachers. And we will restore the automatic employment of newly trained teachers to improve the teacher-student ratio across the country, whilst we consider those who have studied via distance. Now, healthcare. We have a plan for better healthcare and improved public health. We in the NDC believe that quality, affordable treatment should not be determined by where you live or how much money you earn. These barriers to cost and distance continue to exclude millions of Ghanaians from care that they need, causing them to delay seeking care or to forgo it altogether. This is why the next NDC government is going to institute the free primary health care, and I think this will be well articulated by our flag bearer. The primary care is just one piece of the puzzle. We need to build more clinics, as he has said, train more people in diverse healthcare delivery. To maximize the reach of our healthcare system, we will deploy the abandoned Oniado mobile clinic vans to take healthcare to the underserved and to the hard-to-reach communities. And we will build and introduce the Onipenua Hospital ship to provide medical services to riverine and fishing communities along the Volta River that are inaccessible by road. Chronic illnesses are killing more and more Ghanaians, and they are killing them younger and younger. And it is adding insult to injury when healthcare costs make it difficult for them to get the treatments and medication they need to stay alive. So we will establish a cancer and kidney trust fund to support Ghanaians who need assistance for such conditions. To focus our attention on the grave risks that non-communicable diseases pose, we will also declare renal failure, diabetes, hypertension, a national health emergency. This will allow for an unprecedented investment towards providing better access to affordable treatment for persons suffering from these illnesses and who cannot afford to pay for them. Much of the cost of healthcare is determined by cost of medications. We will introduce a policy of framework contracting for pharmaceuticals in order to lower the cost of drugs in our health system. And we will empower the local pharmaceutical industry to produce more generics to feed the domestic drug market as we started in our last administration. Of course, we will also look to our own indigenous knowledge systems for alternatives. And we will do this by collaborating with traditional herbal medicine producers for rapid integration of herbal medicine in Ghana's systems. But a healthcare system is only as good as the healthcare workers within it. How many they are, how diverse they are, how well trained they are. So we will employ qualified health professionals in search of work. We will train more personnel in domiciliary and palliative care to address the health care of the elderly and the sick. We will establish and initiate a plan for the Ghana College of Nurses and Midwives. And in honor of an African giant, we will establish the Professor Jacob Plangerul Endowment Fund for medical and surgical specialist training. A good healthcare system needs guardrails. We are at our most vulnerable when we are in need of care and must be able to trust healthcare workers to act professionally, to keep us safe and to respect our dignity. So in the interest of accountability, we plan to establish a Patients Protection Council to fully implement Patients' Rights Charter. But when healthcare workers distinguish themselves through excellence or sacrifice, that should be acknowledged and rewarded too. The next NDC government will institute a National Health Workers Day and establish an award scheme to deserving practitioners and facilities. And we will extend this to the private sector as well. But our health system must also be responsive to new realities. The perils of COVID-19 have shown the value of capital investment in health infrastructure, and no fair-minded person can ignore how critical the University of Ghana Medical School, the Ga East Hospital, the Bank Hospital, and many others have been to Ghana's effort over the pandemic. And kudos to our incoming president. While we cannot predict the next pandemic, we must be prepared. The lessons from COVID-19 are that a reactionary response will hamper our ability to contain the situation, and that has terrible consequences for our lives and for our livelihoods. So we must be proactive. We must conduct, and we will conduct, a thorough study of our public health and clinical response to COVID-19. We will review the economic incentives and reliefs to understand who really benefited from them. And we will conduct a value for money audit on procurement and spending during this pandemic, including pricing and availability of tests, protective equipment, and medications. We will make those findings public in the spirit of transparency and accountability. And those lessons will inform the development of a national infectious disease plan, one that allows us to mount a faster public health response, to provide more targeted economic support in its wake, to guard against the selfish greed of profiteers and fraudsters, to ensure politics does not triumph over truth and science, and ultimately to save lives. We owe our people equal opportunity to seek justice. Our newspaper headlines continue to show how poverty and gender can be barriers to legal recourse. These intersect in terrible ways to protect perpetrators of gender-based violence from the law. This is an affront to our own founding ideals of freedom and justice. So we intend to resource and operationalize the Victim Support Fund under the Domestic Violence Act, and we will implement the strategic plan of action to address gender-based violence. This is a commitment to provide mental health care for gender-based violence survivors, to create a national hotline to address gender-based violence, to harmonize the law to ensure survivors of gender violence, especially rape victims, are able to access free healthcare services, and to enforce the Trafficking Against Persons Act, and to ensure that poverty is no longer a barrier to competent representation in our courts. We will increase resources for public defenders and expand the Ghana Legal Aid Commission to increase access to justice for the poor and the indigent. So on social justice for our people with disabilities. Central to our political identity as social democrats is a belief of equity and inclusion. We are invested in removing the barriers that exclude any Ghanaian from reaching their full potential, especially those potentials of gender and disability that worsen inequality in our society. Ghanaians living with disabilities continue to inspire with their tenacity, with their resilience, and we as a society must meet them with humility, with humanity, and be responsive to their needs. And this should not be done out of pity, but out of a sense of justice and a desire to do what is right. I was proud to hear the promise that His Excellency John Mahama made to the disabled community in Wa last week. This government's decision to reduce the current government's decision to reduce the share of the District Assembly Common Fund allocated to disabled persons by a third is not acceptable. It is a failure of moral leadership on this matter, and it shows lack of interest in equity and inclusion. And that is why we pledge to review this decision. And because inclusion often means physical access for persons with disabilities, we intend to expand and enforce the laws governing physical access to public buildings for persons with disability and to ensure compliance of government buildings across the nation. Again, this is a moral priority. It is not a political one. Our commitment to social justice extends to gender. I'm living proof of it. But as I said a few weeks ago, the measure of a person's character is how you extend privilege to others. I believe that by holding the doors open and making many more women have opportunity to participate in this in nation building, we will receive other ideas, fresh perspectives that will bring to our nation's development, and that will also save our lives and guarantee the lifeblood of progress. Empowering more women will make our politics and governance more dynamic, more vibrant, more responsive, more inclusive. And in this hour of crisis, Ghana has never needed that freshness, energy, and optimism more than she does right now. Those of us as gatekeepers must recognize this. We must embrace it. We must facilitate others coming through the door. Therefore, the commitment to increase the participation of women in governance is not an idle one. We will focus that effort on the youth so that government of this country better reflects its gender and age demographics. The history of this nation has borne out over and over again the power and potential of young people, including women, to move justice, inclusion, and accountability in governance forward. And while this sometimes means political opportunities, it extends to so much more. That is why we intend to implement the Affirmative Action Bill. If it's not passed, we'll pass it, of course. This is a first step in the direction of justice for Ghanaian women and our centuries of contributions to this nation and the peoples that comprise it. But women face other challenges too. Poverty forces thousands of young girls in Ghana to miss as many as 5 days of school every month, simply because they cannot afford sanitary pads. This is unacceptable and it is unfair. So we will provide free sanitary pads for girls to ensure that a perfectly natural, perfectly normal part of their lives functioning does not become a barrier to education and a better life. So we will focus on girls under 20 who are in school. This is a problem we should have left behind us in the last century, and which we tried to address in our last government. Our opposition ridiculed this idea, but then let us hope the lessons of governance have made them much, much wiser. And as these girls become women, those complexes, those challenges become even more complicated, if not complex. For many young women in the workplace, having a child is a big decision because of what it can mean for their career trajectory. Balancing the demands of office life, the needs of a newborn, and the societal expectations around childcare present real challenges for working mothers. And when the kids are still babies, care and feeding means time off from work. 3 months certainly is not enough for that. Women often have to rely on their annual leave to supplement their maternity leave. And any mother will tell you that that means a whole year work with no time off. So, we will extend maternity leave from 3 to 4 months. And we will also offer 7 days of paternity leave.
Peace FM.
Childcare itself becomes another obstacle. When young families cannot afford childcare or have no one to lean on for support, it is the women whose careers and aspirations suffer the consequences. So as part of our plan to invest in early childhood development, we will work to ensure that creches, daycare centers, and nurseries for children are established in formal workplaces. For example, the ministries complex and, let's say, our markets too. But women also face unique threats. Sexual violence is one of them. Our current system of serving justice to victims and perpetrators is beneath the dignity of this nation and of the women who love and who nurture this nation. This needs to change.
Peace
and that means comprehensive systemic reform. The time is now. So in addition to the criminal justice reforms that I've already outlined, we intend to abolish all charges for medical examinations for victims of sexual assault. It is an abominable disincentive for many women, and it is also only more so the poorer they are. This is morally unacceptable, and there's no justice in that. I want women of this country to know that these commitments we make for you today are also personal for me. I intend to see them done. We have waited for too long, and the time for action is now. We in the NDC believe that another measure of our national character is in how the most vulnerable are treated. We have a long way to go on this path, but we have a plan for that too. We intend to establish an orphan and vulnerable child support scheme as a special vehicle to protect the rights and interests of vulnerable children. And we will promote the construction and upgrading of shelters for vulnerable persons, such as survivors of gender-based violence and trafficked persons. And to my friends Akayaye in our urban centers, and those who form part of the extremely vulnerable group because of their gender or because of their poverty status, we will introduce skills training, social assistance programs in order to ensure that we stall the flow of such women into environments that are not protective at all. We will establish a center of excellence for training social workers to take care of vulnerable, including the elderly, and recognizing the needs and challenges of aging in our time. We will also amend the National Health Insurance Act to reduce the age of eligibility for premium payment under the National Health Insurance Scheme from 70 to 65. and recognizing the challenges that young persons living with disabilities face in accessing education, we are committed to providing them with free tertiary education. Our senior citizens deserve our respect and compassion, which comes and lynching of the aged do not belong to this era. The NDC is determined to stimulate public education and to change the fortunes of the elderly and to bring the perpetrators to book. The next NDC government will support the Department of Social Welfare to create day centers and homes for the aged, reactivate the urban elderly welfare card to enable Ghanaians above 60 years have priority access to social services, and we shall amend Section 29H of the National Health Insurance Act 2012 to enable all persons aged 60 and above to be exempt from premium payment under the NHIS. The NDC recognizes historical inequalities between our Zongo's deprived urban settlements and other communities. The next NDC government will provide regular funding through the District Assembly Common Fund for the development of the Zongos and deprived urban settlements to bridge the inequality gap, strengthen and resource the Islamic Education Unit under the Ghana Education Service, to enable the unit monitor and recruit more Islamic and Arabic tutors, establish 2 senior Islamic senior high schools in the southern and northern sectors for the Zongo communities and others, support the only Islamic College of Education, which we established during my tenure as Minister for Education, by revisiting abandoned infrastructure and providing logistics to enable them recruit and train more teachers. We shall award scholarships to brilliant but needy students in these deprived communities. And especially, we will focus on girls in medical, nursing, educational training. We also intend to provide mentorship programs and opportunities for the youth in these areas, support Arabic teachers in the Makaranta with monthly allowances, enroll youth in Zongo and deprived settlements into the National Apprenticeship Program, as well as ensure that they benefit under the free technical and vocational education and training, that is the free TVET. We will endeavor to ensure that a representative from the Muslim Ummah is placed on the board of the Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. It's all about fairness, it's all about equity. We shall liaise with some banks and other financial institutions to launch the Zongo Housing Scheme to provide support for affordable housing in the Zongos and deprived urban settlements. The NDC is committed to prioritizing youth development through various youth empowerment and entrepreneurship policies and programs. We take cognizance of the growing disappointment and frustration among the youth as a result of high unemployment, which has been worsened by ill-conceived and poorly managed policies of the current administration. The next NDC government will harness the potential of our youth by implementing comprehensive, multifaceted, and innovative programs. We will also provide a more effective institutional framework for empowering our youth and national development. We will have a stand-alone ministry for youth development. The Ministry for Youth Development will advance our youth empowerment agenda. It will mainstream and prioritize youth issues, coordinate the implementation of comprehensive youth development policies and related agencies, address the multifaceted issues confronting the various categories of youth in the country, coordinate entrepreneurship and skills training opportunities for all young persons, especially vulnerable youth groups, facilitate youth participation in decision-making at all levels for national development, build the capacities of our youth, and create more employment. Decentralize the labor office. His Excellency has already talked about it. The 1 Million Coders Program is an initiative that will be implemented through a public-private partnership to provide free training to about 1 million youth with knowledge and skills for coding and programming, web developing, apps developing, expand opportunities in the knowledge and ICT-based economy. In closing, I'll make a few comments. Our manifesto, the People's Manifesto, has been well thought out. What makes it credible is that we have a dependable track record to back it up. The people believe in us because if it is about infrastructure, if it is about healthcare facilities, if it is about schools, if it's about roads, our track record towers above that of anyone. We have no reason to falsely lay claim to projects initiated by another government and even forge non-existent ones. Ghanaians believe us because there's evidence of what we can do and what we do with the revenues and loans we contract. The people believe us when we say we are Democrats because we are. We do not hunt and taunt those who disagree with us because we cherish freedom of speech. We believe the true test of leadership is to eschew arrogance. We do not set out to collapse businesses of those who do not belong to our party. We are a party of fair-minded people. We believe in equal opportunity, and so we give every Ghanaian his or her due. We believe in adding to what we inherit. We do not destroy what others have toiled to create so that anyone will reap where they have not sown. What we have experienced in this country over the last couple of years does not augur well for our country. Nepotism, cronyism, masquerading as business is not good for us. Ghana should not endure more of that. Over the next 3 months, we will carry our message of progress and inclusion to every corner of our country. We look forward eagerly to contrast our vision for the next 4 years and beyond with any other contestants.
Peace FM.
This election is going to be about trust. It's going to be about judgment and vision. John Mahama showed all three in the first major decision he made as part of his governance plan for 2021 and beyond. That is His Excellency Mahama's vision for progress. And that is the vision I joined this ticket to help him to realize. I trust and I believe in this vision. I have seen close up his thoughtfulness and the great value he places on introspection. We share a belief that growth, personal or otherwise, always means change. The President Mahama I know always seeks wisdom in the words even of. He is interested in the views of everyone, especially the so-called common person. Always his abiding questions include, how does this suggestion help the poor, the vulnerable? How does this intervention improve lives? Such concerns resonate well with mine and no doubt with those of many others who also believe that voting is an expression of hope, of trust, of judgment, of faith. The power to extend must be retained in ways that uphold the dignity of human life, that improves the trust of the citizenry in institutions that are expected to be fair, transparent, and protective. That is the character of the man, and that is why I am proud to be his partner in this vision for jobs, prosperity, and more. We, that is the NDC, we are a party for everyone. The farmer, the fisherman, the educated, the non-educated, the teacher, the nurse, the vulnerable, the market trader, the hawker, everyone is welcome. We welcome everyone regardless of status or background. And we invite you all to join us in building a prosperous country in peace and togetherness for the benefit of all Ghanaians. What we will not accept is the premise that Ghana belongs to some elite few who arrogate to themselves the right to determine among themselves how to share our precious resources. Let there be no doubt that this country, our beloved country called Ghana, belongs to all of us, including generations unborn. Let our actions bear witness to that. And those who receive the high privilege of being elected to serve must jealously hold and guard the sacred trust of the people. This we pledge to do. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please come join us. Let's spread the good news of the People's Manifesto. And on December 7th, join us again in reminding those who may have chosen to forget the truth that the people are the real owners of this country. Thank you very much for your attention.
Peace FM 104.3. Good to meet you.